Hey everybody, this is On, and I'm coming to you on the Connecting Codes channel. I know it's been a while because I was out touring and traveling with my work for a while, and it's taken me a little bit to get back to the channel and start focusing on some of the world events again. And hopefully I can do things a little more sporadically for you and to kind of address the world events that are going on. My focus is going to be is to try to keep the videos much shorter and really just focus on some of the core code pieces that are connected to the world events that are happening. So as opposed to doing like the really big deep drives and things like that, and maybe I'll do that once in a while, but with writing getting ready to start up again, it's going to be pretty hard to do that. And what we really want to do is take those core pieces and to look at them and see what those core pieces are about, and then look at really what we can do in our own personal lives outside of the world events, because a lot of people have expressed to me that they feel actually kind of powerless to make any shifts or changes. And one of the things I say all the time is when you change your own life, your own personal sphere, you are changing the world and you are making a difference. And so even though sometimes we don't see the results or we don't always get to see some of those connections in the bigger world events, we do have power to influence it from our own life, because it's all about energy currents and it's all about what is in play. So when we change the energy currents in our own personal lives, we're going to change the energy currents in the world events and how that's playing out. So we can actually take the current of an event, whether it's a false flag, a narrative, anything. And that's one of the great things about codes is you don't always have to stop and filter through everything and all the sources of information. You can just get to the heart of the energy and look at what's happening there. And that can also give us some things to open up, because there are definitely a lot of great people out there sharing information and a lot of people focusing on different aspects and people doing deep dives and things like that. So I really want to take this channel right now towards focusing on the code aspects and the code pieces. And that's hopefully where we can keep going with this, because I think that's where we're going to learn the most. And I think that that's really coming down to the greatest connection for the code journey work in many ways. So those that don't know, every year I put out a book like this. It's a huge book, 700 pages or so, and it's called The Code Journey, and it's a daily guide to for life on Earth. And I share insights about the year and the months and the days all individually. So it kind of gives you a heads up when you're dealing with world events, like who's on the corrupt side and who's not on the corrupt side. You can go in and see what's happening in the codes and go, oh, so-and-so, Biden came out and did this, or Trump came out and did that, or who, whatever world leader came out and did this today. So it starts to cue you in who is on the corruption and who is not on the corruption of things. It kind of cues you in when things might blow up a little bit in the world, or when might be a good time to go and speak your voice on something, and when might not be a good time to attend a rally or things like that. So right now, today, what we're going to cover is we're going to be taking a look at this Ukraine-Russian war that Biden is trying to stir up and trying to kick around. And you might have heard him say, it's imminent. It's imminent that Russia is going to invade Ukraine. And when you start to dig into some of the layers, it's really interesting to get down to it, because we still have, what we have, there's people that are saying this is a false flag, this is a narrative, this is various things. But when we start to get in and look at it, Ukraine and Russia go way back. When I say way back, I mean, we're talking like 200s. 300s, where they had wars going on, and then things settled down and Ukraine went to battle with other people. And then in 2014, Ukraine came back into the picture. And so the current war that they have going on actually has been going on since 2014. So this is not a new war that's going on. This is nothing new. They're trying to scare people by saying Russia's preparing to invade, and it's because they're setting these military aspects up, and all Russia is doing is basically setting up its borders and its defense in there. But what's really interesting in all of this is we have the key players in this, right? We have Vladimir Putin, we have Volodymyr, I'm sorry if I don't pronounce this right, Zelensky, which is over Ukraine right now. Putin, of course, is over Russia. We have Biden stirring up all of this stuff. And when these connections start coming in, as a coding interpreter, what I want to do is get in and look at, okay, where are the personal years for these people? What personal years are they on? Because that's going to tell me a lot about what move they're going to make. And we notice in the political sphere, why would this be coming up now? Why is Biden bringing this up? I mean, he won't even defend our own US borders. So why does he have such an interest in going into Ukraine? It doesn't make any sense. And a lot of the moves he's making over there actually is repeating some of the stuff that's happening in Afghanistan. They're not working to get people out of there. So if there was a true war that was going to go on, don't you think they would be bringing people out unless he's going to repeat what he did in Afghanistan, which in some ways he is, because he's sending all this military equipment over there. It's almost like, here, Ukraine, here's a great gift from the US. Here's a great gift. You're going to need this if you're going to start a war. And yes, I said Ukraine start the war. And why does that come back around? Because when we look at the codes of a Ukraine-Russia war, what we're really looking at here is we're looking at a place that this particular war shows us who wants to find success and integrity and who is going to look for success through connections. Well, this is a very, very interesting piece, right? And to start to delve into this, what does the code show us? Well, we go to the year 2022. So when we bring this war into 2022 versus any other year out there, what do we find? We find the code connections that surface in this that say, okay, the code connections of the Russian-Ukraine war is connected to the past. And that doesn't mean just their battles from back in 200 and 300. It actually comes back to other battles that are actually outside of the Ukraine-Russian war. And what's interesting about this, when we get into this, this goes way back into the 90s. Now, I said this war started in 2014. Well, consider for a moment, who was vice president in 2014? We had an Obama presidency with a Biden vice presidency. So this is the past repeating itself. And this is what the codes show in Ukraine-Russia war for 2022, is the past repeating itself. So people always say, well, Trump's on the Russia side and Biden's on the Ukraine side. So you actually have this interesting component that it's not just Ukraine and Russia, it is a Biden Trump thing that's going on too. And he's actually trying to take it up because I think he's gotten a lot of heat for the way he's come at Trump. He's seen all the support Trump has. So now he's going to deflect that same battle through the two countries. But there's deeper layers. And as we know, Biden hasn't been hardly successful about anything in the US. So when we consider that, and we know that Biden has these corrupt codes, Biden's codes are about destroying freedom. So this is an interesting piece when we start to get into it. And his personal year codes is about ending things, finishing things. And what's very interesting is this Ukraine-Russia war in the code patterns actually surfaced in Biden's code patterns right before, like the connection to it. His same code patterns that he's on now are the same code patterns that he was in just before this war started. So this war is like coming full circle when we look at it from an energy perspective. It's taken an entire cycle that it's gone through. But this isn't the only connections. And you have to stop and ask yourself at some point, why is Biden always supporting Ukraine? Why is Biden always making this push? It can't just be that he thinks that Russia helped Trump somewhere along the way in different things. And we know, of course, why would he do this? Because he doesn't want everything to open up in Ukraine about dealings with Hunter and all these other pieces that are there. So this starts to get very interesting. Of course, he's going to protect Ukraine, because if he doesn't protect Ukraine, everything's going to come out. And that is going to completely destroy him having another cycle of anything politically and things. So he's got a lot kind of sitting on the line. Well, here's another interesting piece that connects with that past when we look at how our past is resurfacing again in current situations. And that's resurfacing so that we can make smarter choices in order to be able to have a more stable and favorable future as we move forward. And a lot of people, they've been taught to hate Putin. Now, I'm not talking about, hey, let's all go out and agree with Putin on everything that he does. I don't agree with everything maybe he does in things. But what are the other hidden past pieces that are coming up? The other hidden past pieces that is even beyond Biden. Biden's just a puppet in this in so many ways. And when we look at this, Biden is just kind of sitting down trying to complete his timeout, basically, is what's happening. But when we get into Putin, there's a whole other past that ties into George Soros. And here's where it's getting interesting, because back in the 90s, George Soros actually wanted to come around, and he wanted to basically, he was going to come in and destroy the economy in Russia, is what he wanted to do. That was his goal. And Putin wouldn't let him. He's like, no, you're not, you're not, you're not going to destroy our economy. So whether you like Putin or not, Putin was not going to tolerate. And here's the interesting things, because in Vladimir Putin's codes, he could go two different directions. He could go full on materialism, which if he was standing in that pattern, he would have welcomed in George Soros. He would have been bought. But the reality of it is that no matter how tough of a leader Putin is, no matter whether we agree with his choices or not, he actually can't be bought. And so he constantly comes under attack, under this judgment. And of course, they say Russia, but they're really meaning Putin in this situation, because who runs Russia? It's Putin. So when you look at this code pattern, he actually can't be bought. And because of that, in his life code patterns, when George Soros tries to come in and buy him, Putin says no. And this creates a jealousy. This means that Soros really wants to have Russia. So what's the best way to get Russia? Invade a neighboring country, Ukraine, right? This is how any of the corruption works. It's always about invasion. So you go into your neighbors, right? It's like if you can't get in through one political party, you invade the other political party, and then you start working on them, and you start crossing the lines, you start crossing the borders of things. And that's where we're at in this situation in here. But it goes back even more than that. So there's no doubt that probably, because what happens is George Soros dropped $100 million into NGOs in Ukraine. So he is very heavily printed. And we know that George Soros is actively involved in wars. And when you look at the things that he tries to start up in the United States, and you look at the different groups he works with, like Antifa and BLM and these different things, and the funding comes through so that they will start wars, they will start battles, they will start fights, they will start these different things. This is the same thing that's happening in Ukraine. And he's going to watch it. When they talk about false flags and things like that, watch for these things to come up, because he will instigate it, and it will not be Russia starting any war. I don't care how many times that Biden says it's imminent, and this is the media push, it's imminent that Russia is going to start a war. No, it's not, actually. And as you look at the code patterns, you see something that's totally different, that opens up this truth, that opens up these different things coming through. So you have this whole timeline. We're back in the 1990s. Putin says, no, you're not going to come into Russia, to Soros. And then what you have coming through is 2014, this battle opens up Well, of course, you've always had this battle between the Trumps and the Bidens sort of aspect going on. So 2014, as word starts to come out that Trump is going to run, isn't it interesting that this battle, this war started up around the time Trump is going to start running for president and start campaigning, right? Because he would have won the election in 2016. So they start this whole battle up, and this is all about trying to threaten Russia. This is all about trying to do these different things. And so in 2016, when things came around, and you have to remember that Biden, not Biden, but Putin, his actions have always been in defense, not offensive when it comes to Ukraine. And so when Ukraine started to invade on Russia, Putin put his forces back up there because Putin's not going to let him just come in and walk. Putin's too strong of a leader. He's not going to do that. And so he puts his forces up. So people often put Trump and Putin together. Well, why did they put Trump and Putin together? Because they are both fighting Soros. And so in 2016, Putin basically put out this thing that said, hey, Soros is a criminal and he's wanted dead or alive. And that didn't necessarily help the Ukrainian-Russian war in things. So you see how this is all past history? We want to believe that this past history are these basic things, or they're trying to make this a brand new war between Russia and Ukraine. It's not a new war, it's past history. And it shows that in the codes when we get down to it. So when we look at what's happening in this year, this is the past resurfacing in this battle. And what is that past about? That is not even just a Biden-Trump thing. That is a Soros-Putin thing that is going on there. So when you start to unfold these and you look at it, and we have Volodymyr Zelensky, for example, okay? Well, first of all, Ukraine, when you look at the aspects of Ukraine in this particular year, this is the year that Soros is basically calling Ukraine to prove itself, prove you are the best, prove this, prove that. So Ukraine is the one that's on the attack, not Russia, which is a very interesting thing from the code perspective. Ukraine is the one that's feeling insecure. Ukraine is the one that has been taken over and destabilized because of George Soros's influence in Ukraine in this aspect. Now, when you look at the personal year code patterns for Volodymyr Zelensky, you find competition, you find battle, you find this. So he is right in line with his country's energy of battle and competition and proving worth and being focused on an opponent versus focused on what he's doing. And why is this happening? It's the Soros influence coming back around in there. So the Soros influence is causing him to focus on Putin instead of running his own country. And that's exactly what's playing out here. He's not taking a look to see what's happening. He is overridden. So he's actually not even in power or control. And when you look at the life codes of Zelensky, what we find is that success only is coming in through connections because he didn't hold integrity. And because of that lack of integrity, he won't have a success that he's recognized for. Now, when we look at Vladimir Putin's codes, now Putin is a person who knows how to hold power. This we know about him. So in the aspect of that, if Putin was actually to take the attack on Ukraine, it would be a misuse of power. In the code pattern that he's on, if he was to misuse the power, it would be total devastation of Putin. And he would just be destroyed, basically. And this is why Biden is trying to antagonize him into this battle. Is he's trying to antagonize and set this narrative that Putin's going to take this action to invade Ukraine. And he's not, because Putin knows that his place of power is staying calm, staying peaceful, just being still. And the more he's still, the more power he's going to have. And the more power he has, and the more still he can stay, like the eye of the storm. He sees the whole storm building around him, but he is going to sit there as the eye of the storm. And that means he's going to hold all of the power in this situation. So when he holds all of the power in the situation like this, drama is going to kick up. And unfortunately for Soros, Biden's gotten involved. And we know basically whatever Biden puts his hands on is done. It's a done deal. Now, the interesting piece about this, when we look at the personal year codes for George Soros right now, George Soros is on a death pattern. So that means that this battle for George Soros is going to take him out one way or another, whether we're talking literally or metaphorically, it's going to take him out. And, you know, Biden is probably going to be the cause of that, because all the stuff is going to come out. So people are sitting back saying, oh, this is such a big thing. It's such a bad thing. It's such a bad. You know how much truth is going to come out? You know how much exposure is going to come out through all of this, between what's happening in Ukraine, Russia, ties between everybody and all of this? It's all going to get exposed, because various things about Biden, he'll be thrown under the bus if George Soros thinks he's in trouble. And so George Soros is now at a point that he's not going to be able to see this through. It's an ending for him. It's an absolute ending for him. And he's going to have a breakdown. His structures are going to be breaking down. His money, his influence, his power is going to be broken down with this war. So if they pursue through with this, because the last time this war was this big, where they're claiming there was this big of a threat, and there's no reason, by the way, for the US to be sending troops or military or equipment over there. There's no reason, there's no indication that that is needed. This is just another play of trying to start World War III, which George Soros would love. George Soros would love all of that, right? But what we're probably going to see is there may be some death included, because anywhere George Soros has his hand right now, there's going to be death coming up. And this is going to be an attempt, one more attempt to try to break down the US, to try to break down the world economies, to try to break all of these structures down so that he can start to support his own narratives. But in the process, this is going to destroy him. So what we're really seeing in this is Biden is going to end up destroying Soros through trying to stimulate this fake war, which is actually an already existing war, by using the existing war between Ukraine and Russia. And this is really about George Soros wanting to take over Putin's Russia. That's really what it's about. It's a, you know, so that past coming back up is what we're seeing in the codes. So what we want to do is start to ask ourselves, so if these are the code patterns that are present, the past resurfacing, okay, these aspects of success, and having to choose between having success with integrity or having success through connections. And we know success through connections never lasts, it's never stable. There's never any real victory or success in that. You have to be able to recognize where you've gone astray. And this is what the codes are asking us. So when we look at this narrative, we want to look into our own lives and say, where have I gone astray? Where did I align with corruption? Where did I choose success by acknowledging the mistakes I've made, the errors that I've made the corrections, and then found the success and integrity? So this is really where we're headed with this. And that's the call that this world event, I want you to take a look at in your own life and say, where am I doing this? Where is the past repeating itself? Where are these old things coming up, these old battles, these old wars, these old competitions? How do I remove the competition? Can I stop and look at it from multiple perspectives and widen the view from the base perspective of it? And how do I choose differently? How do I make sure to choose the success and integrity. And I do it by not relying on my connections. I do it through my own wisdom. I do it by taking a look and saying what went wrong, acknowledging that mistake, and then persevering to do it right. And this is the importance of it. So when you start doing this in your own life and you start saying, I'm going to do things right in my own life, you will be a part of changing this energy in the world. And it's actually going to upset this attempted corruption to create all of this devastation. So each one of us that does this is going to set a wave of energy forward and start to change this. And you will see it. And everybody that gets on board with this, you're going to see these narratives dissolve. You're going to see the corruption exposed. You're going to see the people like George Soros who create this turbulence in the world, that create this drama, these disasters in the world, and try to blame them on natural things and try to blame them on others. You're going to see these narratives crumble. You're going to see the endings. And that's what we want to focus on, is we want to break through. We don't want to break down. We want to break through. We want everything to come to an end. We want to be the eye of the storm. We want to be still. We want to be in observation. We want to think rationally and clearly. And we don't want our actions to be based on the influence of somebody else. It's not about having to prove our worth. It's about knowing our worth. So I'm going to encourage you to know your worth. And that also will break down the wars and the competitions in the world. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. Hey, hit me up, give me some comments, tell me, hey, I like this. I like what you're doing. I like the insights. I like the perspectives. And thanks for letting me know that I, in my own personal life, through my own work, can have an impact on the world. And with that, take care, everybody, and I will see you soon.